The Meat Inspection Act of 1906 is the act that saved thousands, if not millions of lives. Back in 1865, Chicago's meatpacking district was opened. Just 2 years later, in 1867, the first U.S. refrigerated railroad car patent was issued, which led Chicago to become a hub of meat processing as packing companies popped up around the stockyards. Soon, this area became known as Packing Town, and in the next 2 decades, Chicago started exporting meat overseas, primarily to British markets. That's how British journalist Adolphe Smith became interested in writing a journal about Chicago's meat industry. In 1904, Smith decided to head to Chicago and explore its meatpacking industry. He wanted to know how Chicago became a giant of the meat market, what was the packing process, working conditions, and so on. He expected to see a perfectly coordinated process, perfect working conditions, people working with smiles on their faces while earning nice salaries. But what he found shocked not only him, but the whole world. Unsanitary conditions, inhumane treatment of hogs and cattle, and poor worker safety. Smith could not believe his eyes. In the following year, Smith published his Chicago articles without a single positive thing about the meatpacking industry of the Windy City. Articles had immediate effects. Chicago's tinned meat exports dropped by 50% in the months following. But something even worse was about to be seen by the eyes of the public. Smith articles were just a foundation and inspiration for Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle, a novel Sinclair wrote with focus on working conditions, trying to touch the public's heart. Since Smith's articles caused chaos, it was impossible for Sinclair to just walk into the factory and document everything. So he really had only one option: go undercover. And that's what he did. Sinclair spent 2 months of his life working in a meatpacking factory, seeing things that make food in your stomach travel up your throat, earning pennies and making friends with unskilled immigrant workers, all while documenting everything. Rats running around and getting turned into sausage, widespread contamination and diseased meat, and even human pieces finding its way into the processed meat and onto plates of consumers. There are stories of workers distracting the meat inspectors who were there to check for tuberculosis in cows, so that the cows that they knew were tubercular could just be passed through and into the cooling cars. In The Jungle, you can find various descriptions of the mold-covering meat being washed off in the bath of borax, and then going back onto the processing lines. The carts used for transporting sausages were contaminated with human urine and rat feces. Factory walls were covered in dried rotting meat and blood, perfectly supporting germ and bacterial growth. Fresh cuts of meat were rare, and even if there were any, they were lying at the same spot as moldy, contaminated meat. When buying canned meat, consumers were buying literally anything but meat. However, that's on them. Back then, the population was completely ignorant of what was going into their food. The real chaos took place when The Jungle was published. Even though Sinclair aimed for the public's heart, he touched their stomach. All of this was more than enough to convince back then America's President Theodore Roosevelt to send one of his guys to check the situation. After it was confirmed book content was true, Roosevelt became a supporter of regulation of the meatpacking industry, and on June 30th, signed the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. The act established a system of federal inspections of meatpacking facilities, and it required that all meat sold in the United States be inspected and approved by the government before it could be marketed. The act was a major victory for the progressive movement, which sought to promote government regulation and oversight of various industries in the interest of public health and safety. Roosevelt's leadership in the passage of the Meat Inspection Act was a reflection of his broader political philosophy. He believed in the role of government as a positive force for good, and he worked tirelessly to promote the welfare of the American people. He was a champion of the working class and of the common man, and he saw the Meat Inspection Act as a way to ensure that all Americans had access to safe and nutritious food. The 4 primary requirements of the Meat Inspection Act were mandatory inspection of livestock before slaughter, mandatory post-mortem inspection of every carcass, sanitary standards established for slaughterhouses and meat processing plants, and authorized U.S. Department of Agriculture ongoing monitoring and inspection of slaughter and processing operations. Fortunately, it didn't stop there. After 1906, many additional laws that further standardized the meat industry and its inspection were passed, raising the quality of life. If we look at the life expectancy chart, we'll notice something interesting. In the 1900s, when Chicago's meatpacking industry reached its filthy peak, life expectancy in the US was only 47 years. Less than 5 decades after the Meat Inspection Act was established, life expectancy grew to 68. What do you think? Does meat quality have anything to do with this? Let us know your opinion down below. But a more important question is, what do you think would happen if all of this was discovered decades later? How low would life expectancy be? Would there be a pandemic, and how would it affect us in any way? Guess we'll never find that out thanks to these 2 brave journalists and a president who acted quickly. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the screen to watch the next video.